Hi guys, today I want to share with you an amazing woman who was my great cousin, and I'm just so excited to want to share this with you because on the 4th and the 5th of September in 1936 this occurred, and it was a great feat in that day, and this woman was Beryl Markham. She was an aviator, she was a horse trainer, and she was a writer and author. She's written quite a few books as well. And the books that she has written is just absolutely amazing. You can do research on her on Google if you like. But I am going to share with you what I know of Beryl and the life that she led. Beryl was born in Ashworth in Leicestershire to Charles and Clara Clutterbuck, and she had a brother called Richard. Her father, when the British government started selling off land in Kenya, when they took over there, and her father bought land and he took the family across to Kenya. And he set up a horse farm and sawmill over there as well. And because of the life in Kenya, it was so difficult. It was, having to build your own house out of mud and clay, and they had to drill for water in those years. Clara didn't like it. She then decided to leave and take Richard with her. And Beryl never saw her mother for 17 years. And she was brought up by her military-trained father, who was his retired British Army captain at the time. And she grew up in this hardship. And then he started getting all these nannies coming, or governesses coming over to teach her, and she had no interest in what they were teaching, and they abused her or beat her because she wouldn't listen and she wouldn't follow their direction in what they were trying to teach her. And therefore Beryl became very anti-woman. She never had many female friends, and this was one of the relationships which she had. But living in Leo and Nandi, she had a lot of influence from the Maasai tribe, and they were her friends, and she grew up with them, and she hunted with them, and hunting practically naked, and those were her friends. She grew up in the tribe, and in the tribe that was working there, and her friends were those people, the African people. And a lot of people that live in Africa on farms, those are who your friends were. Even my friends in Africa were friends from the farm, and that is how her upbringing was. These governesses couldn't tame her at all. And this child just loved life. And she had a wonderful need for life, Beryl did. And she didn't care about rules and government. But the funny thing is, throughout her life, men dominated her, which is with her father. She used to look up to him for everything. Her father was her hero. And ever since then, she learned from men. Her whole life was based on learning from men. And this is how Beryl grew up, as men guiding her. And they were the ones that taught her about everything. And with survival being in the forefront, she became imbued with an unnerving sense of fate. Now, there were 3 events that occurred in her life. Lady Delamere, I think, was the second wife of she was the first wife of Lord Delamere, who was the second Lord Delamere. And she tried to help her along and teach her and took her under her wings and helped her along in her life. And due to the prolonged drought in Kenya, I think it was 1932, around about there, somewhere along there, there was a massive drought, and her father had to sell his farm and everything, and he was offered a position in Peru, and he left her, and she was now about 16 years old, and he left her over there and married her practically off to Jock Purvis. Now, Jock Purvis was a very well-known rugby player in his time then, but he was also a drunk, and he abused her. And eventually, she managed to get divorced from him. And she tried, after her father left, to get a horse trainer's license. Now, she was up against the establishment of men to try and get a horse trainer's license again. And eventually, she made a deal with the horse training, or the people who ran the establishment of the horse training over there. She made a deal with the chairman of the horse racing club. And she said, well, give me 1 horse. And if that horse wins, you will let me train. You will give me a trainer's license. And everybody laughed at her. And eventually they agreed on that one deal. Lo and behold, she trained a horse and it won. So she got her horse trainer's license. And she had about 46 wins of in her lifetime of horses. And she had, I think, 6, the prestigious event of the St. Ledger's horse racing. She won 6 times of her top race horses. And she was brilliant in what she did with horse racing. But then eventually she met Deneys Finch Hatton, and she had an affair with him, and they flew around in his Vega Gull. And, sorry, not in his Vega Gull, I apologize. She flew around with him in his Tiger Moth. And she fell in love with aviation. And one day, she wanted to fly with him to Tsavo, and Deneys Finch Hatton then eventually came back to her. They agreed that they were going to fly. And Deneys Finch Hatton went to Karen Wixon, who he was living with and had an intimate affair with. Karen said that she will leave him if Beryl flew with him. And he came back to her and he said to her, I'm sorry, I'm not taking you with to Tsavo. And she was very disappointed about that. And because she was really looking on having a longer journey with him on his plane. But that was, and so in any case, he flew off and came back. And then the next day, he took off again at Voir, and his plane went into a spiral and he died in the plane crash. And it really affected her badly, that he died in this accident. And I know Deneys Finch Hatton was buried on the Ngong Hills, about 6 miles or 8 miles out of the national park, the Kenya National Park. And he's buried there. And even to this day, the lions still sit on his grave and look out. And that was an amazing story but you can research it on Google. It is there. And if you want to find anything, but what you are getting is from me. After that, she went to the flying school and she met Tom Campbell Black there, and he started training her to get her private pilot's license. And then she started studying for her commercial license, which she had to do all the training for, repair aircraft and map reading, navigation, meteorology, and everything that Tom Campbell Black briefed her on and trained her. That eventually she was the first woman, again, in Kenya to get her commercial pilot's license. Once she got her commercial pilot's license, she started flying around and spotting game for like Blixen and and people that were hunting, because that was big. Big game hunting was a big thing in Kenya until I think it was Prince Henry and the future King Edward. They came and they were filming them. They didn't do hunting. And that's when the whole fashion started with filming, and the hunting eventually stopped. But she would spot hunting for them, drop them notes and give them coordinations where it was. She would fly to all the mines around there and take food supplies or pick up sick people. And she started the air ambulance practically. A small part of it was flying sick people back to doctors or doctors to sick people in and around the African areas. And that's what Beryl did when she started flying. And then she also took Brawl. She decided to fly to England. And I know she's flown this twice, her route before. And she crash landed outside Paris once. And then the second time she flew 6,000 miles with Brawl Blixen, and she went to London with him. And she got to London and she started looking for a challenge that she needed to do. And because she had a relationship also with Tom Campbell Black, and she wanted to go from London to Johannesburg and London together with Tom Campbell Black. But unfortunately, Tom Campbell Black betrayed her, and he married a film star, and he then he actually died on an aircraft accident where somebody flew over him and killed him. The propellers cut up the cockpit and killed him. And she started looking for a sponsor. And she met the Lord Carberry, who was in London at the same time. And he said to her, why don't you do a crossing across the pond? And I'll pay for the aircraft and all your fees. But he was a very nasty man, and he wasn't very well liked in Kenya either. And he manipulated people. But unfortunately, she grabbed she grabbed his plan, and she said, yes, I will do it. But he wanted to get rid of her because she was a thorn in his side. And he thought she'll pop into the pond and die. And this was for her crossing across America from east to west. And she started planning. They got onto the contract. They did everything. She started training. And Hubert Stamford Broad, who trained her, and they developed the Vega Gull for her, and that she had to fly. And he helped her with her training. And Jim Mollison also came to help her to train and get everything done. And then when everything was set and ready to go, she had 2 big fuel cells in the back of her aircraft, and in the wings of her aircraft was fuel. There was enough fuel to get to New York, and that was her planned destination. Now, remember, she's flying into winds, and Lindbergh flew with tailwinds. So there's a difference that she did. She took a very difficult route in her time. And Beryl was absolutely amazing in her preparation, her dedication and her training and everything. When they got the aircraft, because they were doing it all at Abingdon Airfield. And when on the 4th of September, 1936, at about, I think it was about 7 o'clock, I'm going to read you a transcript of Beryl, a letter that she wrote to the editor of the Daily Mail on that was printed on Saturday, September the 5th, 1936. She wrote this letter to the editor. As I'm now on the eve of what I believe a rather hazardous flight, I would ask the usual courtesy extended to the condemned to state some of my views. I notice that I have been frequently captioned in the press as society mother, flying mother, bird woman, etc. The phrase society is repugnant to me. I have no pretensions and fail to see that bearing an accident of birth has had to do with flying the ocean. I may be just another blonde, but as a professional pilot accustomed to working for my living, and as the flight could not even in my wildest dreams be described as pleasure, I look on it as merely another job of work. When I'm asked by my reasons for going, I give various explanations in every time. As adequate a reason as any other is that, whatever the result of my efforts, I shall not have laboured but in vain, as it will give a very real friend, no other than bold, bad Jim Mollison, an excellent excuse for celebration, or the reverse. In describing my, as yet, unaccomplished, but no doubt amazing exploit, please give me the credit of being an ordinary human being without too many of the conventional virtues. I can laugh, love, hate, and occasionally fall in at the local off license to hear the views of my fellow beings. I'm neither an innocent girl from the country or a city slicker, but an ocean flyer in embryo. If I can dispense with the last two words, I'm more than satisfied. Signed, Beryl Markham. Yes, at 6:50 a.m. on the 4th of September 1936, she departed the military airfield at Abingdon, England, in the Vega Victor Papa Kilo Charlie Charlie was the Vega gull, and it was called the Messenger. There's two passengers side by side with a 200 horsepower DH Gypsy 6-cylinder engine and a cruise speed of 163 miles per hour. It was equipped with a French Ratier variable pitch prop. Fuel was carried in 6 tanks to standard tanks in 2 wings and for long range, 2 in the center sections and 2 in the cabin. 255 total gallons, 3,800 mile range. There was 1 gauge for the standard tanks. The extra tanks had no gauges. Now, can you imagine that? And as each emptied, Beryl was required to switch it off with a petcock and open the next one in a special sequence that maintains the airplane's balance. The panel's Niagara display included a Reed and Sigrist turn and slip indicator, a Sperry gyro, and an artificial horizon. And an instruction called a fore and aft reader, which measures rate of climb, and there was no radio. Now, can you imagine that? Flying up there with no radio. I mean, the young pilots today cannot imagine that, because some of the old pilots can, but they can tell you. The Messenger was airborne at 1,800 feet, so heavy it was laden. And all she had with her was a flask of coffee and a chicken sandwich and some nuts. That's it. And she was going to fly through the night with this heavy winds. And eventually there were some incidents where her engine was starting to stall, and she'd started descending, and because of the, as you're descending fast, the carb heat was icing up as you're getting cold, closer to America. And she descended, and just about, apparently, she said to me, 1,500 feet, she managed to gain her engine again, and she managed to continue, where she crash landed in Nova Scotia. And that is where, on the 5th of September, she crash landed over there. Now, can you imagine this from a woman who really wanted to do what she wanted to do, and her determination? And I totally understand what she means. When she crashed in Nova Scotia, she crashed into like a bog area, and she hit her forehead, and she scratched her forehead, and she had blood gushing down her, and she had a pair of trousers on with a silk, all white, a silk shirt, and she climbed out of the aircraft, and this farmer on the other side was there with his sheep, and she says, "Oh, good afternoon," or whatever, what time it was. She said, "My name is Mrs. Markham. I've just flown in from London." And this farmer was so gobsmacked, she said, he didn't know what to say to her, but eventually he got to his senses, and he says, "Oh, come with me and I'll take you to the farmhouse, and you can phone who you need to phone. We'll get you through on the exchange," which they did. And eventually on the 9th of September, they came and collected Beryl. And when she arrived, they came and fetched her from New York, and they flew back to Floyd Bennett Field near New York. And the mayor of New York, he was called Mayor LaGuardia, and he had a ticket parade prepared for her, and they went through New York, and she got the key to the city in New York. And this was amazing, this feat that Beryl did, and I am so proud of her. There is so much. There's a book of her, West with the Night, that she wrote. She wrote African Stories is another book that she wrote. And everybody doesn't believe that she wrote this book, but she did. She was married also to Michael, a gentleman. She was married to, I know his name, but I'm not going to mention it. She was married then, and he claimed that he wrote the book, and he couldn't have written the book because she knew every detail, and he took claim of this, and eventually he denied it. And he said, no, she did write the book, and Beryl did write that book. So whatever anybody says, it's not true. And there were other gossips about her as well, and that she had an affair with Prince Henry, the brother of King Edward at the time. And yes, she had an affair when they were hunting in Kenya. She had an affair, but it was a fling. And then the authors and everybody writes that, that Mansfield Markham, her husband, who was related to me from the Markham family, because his mother was my great-granddad's sister. And Mansfield Markham was her son, and he married her, and she kept the name Markham because of Jervis, their son. And these authors all wrote that she had an affair, and they tried to stop the relationship, and Mansfield Markham was going to name him on the divorce. And those days it was very strict to get divorced. And it was absolutely not true. She did fall in love with Hubert Broad, and he was the one that was named on the divorce documents, which I have copies of. So I'm just trying to correct history at the present moment. And this is what I am putting together today for you. And I will share some photographs of Beryl that I can share with you, and that in our time, we didn't have cameras, and I didn't use a camera for anything because I was too busy flying myself. And she never had any photographs. She just left everybody to write about her. She didn't care. And so the family doesn't have any photographs of her. I've got one photograph, which I cannot find now, of her, which is a photograph. And that's all I've got, but I cannot find it. And I've looked everywhere for the last 2 days, but I will find it. I've got it somewhere. And then I will share it with you on another blog if I do something more about Beryl, if you guys were interested. So guys, that is all that I'm sharing with you today with Beryl Markham, because it's the 90th anniversary, 90th year of her flying. And I find it fascinating to know that she was part of one of the ones that are famous in the family. We've got other people also in our family that are very famous. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, everybody. Well, guys, we've come to the end of another vlog this week, and I hope you enjoyed what I've done. And if you've liked what you've seen, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, or comment. I love getting comments from everybody. So please have a great time this weekend, and I'll catch you on the next vlog. Bye for now.